All right, guys, how are you doing? For today's video, this one shouldn't take me too long because it's actually a pretty easy subject that I want to cover. What we're going to do today is we're going to debunk the idea that it's been kind of propagated or put forward by the 1619 Project, and that idea is that policing in the United States was established primarily because of slave patrols, and it's deeply rooted in racism and slavery. It's like I said, it's very easy to debunk, and that's what we're going to do today. So here it is. I'm actually not on the 1619 Project's webpage. I'm on the NAACP's webpage. If you guys can see it at the top, it's NAACP.org, and it's the origin of modern policing. Tough on crime laws have put an unprecedented number of nonviolent offenders behind bars. Neighborhoods don't feel safe and secure anymore. And then it has slave patrols. It says the origins of modern day policing can be tracked back to the slave patrol. The earliest formal slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the early 1700s with one mission: to establish a system of terror and squash slave uprisings with the capacity to pursue, apprehend, and return runaway slaves to their owners. And then it has this cute little oath that these slave patrol guys took when they got hired or whatever it is. So I want to focus right here where it says the earliest formal slave patrol was created in the Carolinas in the 1700s. Now, if they're saying that this was the origin of policing in the United States, then what they're saying is that there should be no policing in the United States prior to the 1700s, right? Well, if you do like a Google search of when did policing begin in the United States, you're going to get a variety of different articles. I found one right here. This is from Time Magazine. And in it talks about, where's the dates I'm looking for? Right here. Talking about police departments. It's saying Boston created its first one in 1637. New York followed in 1658. And then Philadelphia created one in 1700. Last time I checked, now I am not a math professor or a history professor, but I believe that 1637 came before the 1700s. And then if you go to the actual web pages for these police departments, there's more information here. Let's see. The people of the town of Boston established a watch in 1631. Shortly after that, after a town meeting, the control of the watch in 1637, watchmen patrolled the streets of Boston at night to protect the public from criminals, animals, and fire. This was the origin of policing in the United States. The city of New York is very similar. In the Dutch era, from 1625 to 1664, the first professional police department, was created in New Amsterdam. Police officers used rattles as they patrolled the streets to discourage crime and apprehend criminals. Under British rule from 1664 to 1783, constables were charged with keeping the peace. They focused on offenses such as excessive drinking, gambling, prostitution, and church service disturbances during the Revolutionary War, and then it goes on a little bit further. Now, this article here, this is the one that kind of tells the origin of policing the way I was told the origin of policing when I began my police career in 2011 at the police academy. Now, we're going to be talking about the origin of policing in the United States, not the origin of formal policing or formal police departments. That was started in London or England, whatever you want to. I don't know if it was actually in the city of London proper. I don't remember, but it was Robert Peels is recognized internationally as the father of modern policing. That was some time prior to this. But policing in the United States began primarily as dock patrols, shore patrols, night watchmen. And you know what's kind of funny is there was a video that I made a long time ago, probably 2 years ago. It's probably one of my early videos on this channel where I made a comment about how the job of a police officer is to protect people, property, and to protect commerce. And when I mentioned that police officers or police forces were formed to protect commerce, people lost their minds. They're like, see, it's nothing but a money grab. It's just for rich people, blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not sinister like that at all. You have to remember what was going on in the early 1600s, not the 1700s like the NAACP wants you to remember, to believe. The early 1600s, about 70 to 80 years before the first slave patrols, you had these docks, you had ports, and that's the reason that Boston, New York, and Philadelphia were the three first real police departments in the country, because they had the largest seaports. So you had ships coming into port, and they would either remain docked and everybody would get off their ships and go ashore for a while, because traveling across the Atlantic Ocean in the 1600s was not a fun thing to do, and getting off your ship was probably your number one objective. So these guys would get off their ships, and then thieves and robbers and criminals would get on their ships and pillage them dry, right? I mean, that's kind of what happens. And if they didn't get onto the ships, then the materials would be stored in warehouses, and criminals would go to the warehouses. Like, these port areas were where the majority of kind of crime was at the time, because that's where the targets were. So, and it goes to explain it here in this article a little bit too. Where is it? It was these night watch officers. They were supervised by constables, but that wasn't exactly a highly sought after job. Early policemen did not wear badges because these guys had bad reputations to begin with. They didn't want to be identified as the people the other ones didn't like. Let's see. And here it says, if you were rich enough, you paid someone to do it for you. Ironically, often it was a criminal or a community thug. So these were guys that were just kind of patrolling the beaches, the warehouse area. If you had enough money and you had a business that you wanted to protect, you would hire a night watchman. As it would turn out, there was a bunch of warehouses and docks and all these other businesses that were co-located very near each other, and they were all hiring 2 or 3 night watchmen. Well, this becomes expensive. And then what you might notice, if you have 9 or 10 businesses all next to each other, and they all have maybe 1 or 2 night watchmen watching their business, those night watchmen might come outside, and you've got like 15 to 20 guards that are all being paid independently to do the same job. Eventually what happened was all of these businesses, the shipyards, the docks, the warehouses, the transportation companies, all of this stuff, they actually kind of came together and they started kind of chipping in a couple of bucks. So like, hey, I will provide this much money to the pot to pay for my portion of the protective services. And then this kind of this conglomeration of businesses would go out and hire a couple of night watchmen. That way, instead of each business having 1 or 2 guys watch their business at night, you could probably have 3 or 4 guys watch all of the businesses. And instead of hiring, 20 people, you only have to hire 4 people. So it's significantly cheaper. This was the concept. These groups of night watchmen eventually became what are modern day police forces. And it started in Boston, New York, and Philadelphia, contrary to what the morons at the 1619 Project want you to believe, that it started in the 1700s with slave patrols. So just for the people that might be a little bit slow, the 1619 Project and the NAACP, unfortunately, they believe that modern day police forces started in the 1700s with slave patrols. But if you go to the Boston Police Department webpage, it says that they began in 1636, and in New York, 1625. And then there's also this Times article that basically says the same thing. One thing that I want to point out is that this Times article was published in May of 2017. Let's see, this New York one was in 1993. And I don't know when this information on the Boston, last updated 2017. So the 1619 project started in 2019. The reason I bring that up is because I don't want people saying, oh, well, the 1619 project came out and said this, therefore all these other organizations are coming out trying to say, something contrary. These guys all had their information out first, and then the 1619 project came out and just made up a bunch of bullshit. It's just not true. It's not real. It's not based in reality. And even if it has some, I'm sure there were slave patrols in the South, and that's a very real thing because slavery occurred in the South, and I'm from the North. I'm from one of the Union states that my ancestors actually participated in the war that ended up freeing the slaves. So I can assure you that my life and my career has not been based in slavery. But they want you to believe that these slave patrols that started after these professional police departments are actually the foundation of policing. And it's just not true. It's a lie. People need to stop spreading it. I think that's all I'm going to say today. Thank you for watching. I'll talk to you later.